Ambassador Sarah Chen traced her fingers along the curved glass of Stellar Station Alpha's observation deck, watching the gentle dance of diplomatic vessels against the star-studded backdrop of space. The reinforced transparent steel window caught her reflection. A woman in her early 40s wearing the midnight blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, silver pins denoting her 15 years of service catching the light from distant suns. Ambassador, the Dorsani delegation has arrived. Her eye assistant's voice chimed softly through her neural implant. Chen nodded, watching as the crystalline structure of the Dorsani ship caught the light of the nearby star, sending rainbow refractions across the observation deck. Thank you, Atlas. Please ensure their environmental controls are adjusted to their preferred settings. She continued watching as the ship's docking procedure began, its graceful approach a testament to the pilot's skill. How many species have arrived for the summit? 15 out of 17 confirmed delegations have docked. Ambassador, the Vex Trading Consortium and the Meridian Alliance are expected within the next standard hour. Chen allowed herself a small smile. 6 months of careful negotiations, countless late-night discussions, and more cups of various alien beverages than she cared to remember had led to this moment. The Outer Rim Trade Agreement would reshape the balance of power in this sector, creating a network of mutual prosperity that could resist imperial economic pressure without direct confrontation. The observation deck's door whispered open behind her. Impressive view, isn't it? The voice belonged to Catal, the station's Arcturian chief of security. His iridescent scales shifted from deep blue to green as he moved to stand beside her. Though I admit, I'm watching the Imperial border more than the arriving ships. They won't risk direct interference. Chen replied, though she noted how Catal's upper eyes remained fixed on the sector's outer boundary. The Empire relies too heavily on appearance. Open aggression would undermine their narrative of benevolent leadership. Catal's scales flickered with skepticism. Humans always see patterns in chaos. Ambassador, sometimes a storm is just a storm. And sometimes, Chen countered, turning to face her friend. The pattern is there, whether others see it or not. The Empire's trade restrictions have increased by 27% in the outer sectors. Their customs inspections now take 3 times longer than standard. They're squeezing independent worlds, Catal, hoping they'll beg for Imperial protection. The security chief's response was cut short by a sudden alarm. His scales flashed crimson as he accessed the station's security feed through his neural interface. Chen felt her own implant buzz with urgent data packets from Atlas. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. Catal announced, his voice tight. Imperial signatures. Heavy cruiser class. Chen's diplomatic training kept her voice steady even as her mind raced through scenarios. How many? 3 cruisers, 8 escort vessels. Ambassador, they're powering weapons. Begin emergency evacuation procedures, Chen ordered, already moving toward the command center. Alert all docked vessels. Priority tow. The first Imperial salvo struck the station's shields, filling the observation deck with harsh blue light. Chen watched as the carefully crafted protection grid that she had personally insisted on upgrading 6 months ago struggled against the onslaught. It would buy them minutes, nothing more. Her neural implant chimed with an incoming Imperial transmission. The message was brief, carried all the formal diplomatic signatures, and bore the personal mark of the Imperial High Command. Negotiations have concluded. The Empire thanks you for your service. As the station's shields began to fail, Chen's expression hardened. The Empire had just made a fundamental mistake in their calculations. They assumed that humanity's diplomatic corps operated through the same rigid protocols as their Imperial counterparts. They didn't understand that Earth's diplomats were trained for more than just negotiation. They were trained for survival. And Sarah Chen had already begun planning her response. The Earth vessel Meridian glided through space, its polished hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside her quarters, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat before a holographic display that filled the room with a 3-dimensional map of Imperial space. Her fingers moved through the projection, marking trade routes that pulsed like golden arteries between the stars. Atlas, overlay the casualty reports from Stellar Station Alpha, she commanded, her voice steadied despite the weight of the past week. The AI complied, and red markers bloomed across the display. Each point represented lives lost, dreams shattered, and diplomatic ties severed. Analyzing Imperial response patterns, Atlas reported, they're maintaining their official stance that the station harbored rebel elements. Local news networks are broadcasting their prepared statement on continuous cycles. Chen nodded, watching as another layer of data appeared. Financial transactions flowing out of Imperial banks to various media outlets. They're following their standard protocol. Suppress the truth, control the narrative, and wait for the galaxy to forget. She stood, smoothing her diplomatic uniform. Time to show them why that's a mistake. The Meridian's bridge crew snapped to attention as she entered. Captain Laura Rodriguez, a veteran of both space combat and diplomatic escorts, approached with a datapad. Ambassador, we've received an invitation from Imperial Diplomatic Command. They're hosting a reception to celebrate enhanced security measures in the Outer Rim. Chen accepted the datapad, reading the ornate Imperial script with careful attention. How kind of them to invite us to celebrate their own aggression. Please inform them that I would be honored to attend. Her voice carried no trace of the anger she felt. That emotion was carefully stored away, fuel for the long game ahead. Hours later, she stood in the Grand Imperial Reception Hall, a masterpiece of architecture that soared hundreds of meters above the capital city. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across marble floors, while anti-gravity platforms carried servers with delicacies from 100 worlds. Ambassador Chen, a smooth voice called out, "We were unsure if you would join us tonight." Imperial High Diplomat Voss approached, his ceremonial robes trailing behind him. His species, the Caloran, were known for their empathic abilities, a trait that made them prized as Imperial diplomats. Chen raised her glass in greeting, her mental shields carefully maintained. High Diplomat Voss, I wouldn't miss such an important gathering. Recent events have reminded us all how crucial diplomatic connections are. Voss's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of mild surprise. Indeed, though I must admit, we expected more. Resistance from Earth regarding the Stellar Station incident. Earth understands the complexities of maintaining order, Chen replied, taking a small sip of her drink. Though we hope future security operations might be handled with more precision. As they conversed, Chen's neural implant worked silently, recording every face in the crowd, every whispered conversation within range. Atlas processed the data in real time, building connections between the gathered diplomats, noting which species representatives clustered together and which remained isolated. You seem to be taking recent events remarkably well, Voss observed, his empathic senses probing gently against her mental shields. Chen smiled, the expression perfectly calibrated to convey polite interest without revealing the strategic calculations running through her mind. The mark of a good diplomat, High Diplomat Voss, is the ability to maintain composure in any situation. Would you agree? Later, back in her quarters aboard the Meridian, Chen reviewed the evening's intelligence harvest. Her neural implant projected the data onto her private terminal, financial records, trade agreements, personal relationships, and hidden alliances. Each piece of information was a weapon, more powerful than any Imperial warship. Atlas, begin Phase 2, she commanded. Distribute the first data packet to our Dorsani contacts. Let's see how the Empire handles their mineral suppliers discovering the true value of their exports. The AI acknowledged the command as Chen turned back to the star map. Sometimes the most devastating responses weren't delivered with weapons or words, but with carefully revealed truths. The Empire had taught her that lesson at Stellar Station Alpha. Now she would teach them the cost of that education. The Dorsani Mineral Exchange buzzed with activity as traders watched their holographic displays with increasing concern. Market indicators flashed red across curved screens, reflecting off the crystalline architecture that the mineral-rich species preferred. High Minister Carax, his crystalline exoskeleton shimmering with stress patterns, studied the data packet that had arrived through unofficial channels. "Verify these numbers again," he commanded his analysts, all 6 of his sensory appendages twitching with agitation. The data showed that Imperial refineries had been systematically underreporting the quality of Dorsani crystal exports, paying barely 40% of their true market value. Aboard the Meridian, Ambassador Chen watched the aftermath of her first move through encrypted feeds. "Atlas, monitor the Dorsani Exchange's response. Have they begun withdrawing from their Imperial contracts?" "Affirmative," the AI responded. "The Dorsani High Council has initiated emergency sessions. Imperial traders are reporting significant disruptions in crystal shipments. Estimated impact on Imperial manufacturing sectors: 17% decrease in efficiency within the next standard week." Chen nodded, turning her attention to the next phase of her strategy. The holographic display shifted to show the vast trading halls of the Vex Consortium, where 6-limbed merchants conducted complex financial transactions through neural interfaces. A new data packet was ready for transmission, this one containing evidence of Imperial currency manipulation. "Ambassador," Captain Rodriguez called from the bridge, "we're receiving an urgent communication from Imperial High Command. They're requesting clarification about Earth's position on the current trade disruptions." "How thoughtful of them to ask," Chen replied, her voice carrying the hint of satisfaction. "Please inform them that Earth's diplomatic corps is currently conducting a comprehensive review of all interstellar trade agreements. We'll respond to their inquiry once our analysis is complete." The message was perfectly diplomatic, completely uninformative, and would drive Imperial analysts mad trying to decode its hidden meaning. Chen had learned that sometimes the most effective weapon was uncertainty itself. Her neural implant chimed with an incoming transmission from an unexpected source. The Arcturian Trade Federation, historically neutral in galactic politics, was requesting a private audience. Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. The ripples were spreading faster than anticipated. Hours later, she sat across from Ambassador X Hall of the Arcturian Federation in a secure meeting room aboard a neutral vessel. The Arcturian scales shifted through patterns of blue and green, indicating careful consideration. "These disruptions in the crystal trade," Exhol began, "they coincide rather conveniently with certain information that has recently come into our possession." The ambassador's upper eyes fixed on Chen while the lower pair scanned a data display. Information suggesting similar Imperial practices affecting Arcturian shipping routes. Chen took a measured sip of Arcturian tea, letting the silence stretch comfortably. "The galaxy seems full of interesting data these days," she finally responded. "Perhaps it's time for independent trading nations to review their economic partnerships." Saul's scales flickered with understanding. "The Empire's reach is long, Ambassador Chen. Some might say too long to challenge." "Length can be a weakness," Chen replied, setting down her cup. "The longer the reach, the more points of stress exist. The Empire's strength lies in isolation, keeping its trading partners separate, unaware of shared experiences." She leaned forward slightly. "But patterns have a way of becoming clear once one knows where to look." Later, as Chen reviewed the day's developments from her quarters, Atlas reported a 30% increase in encrypted communications between non-Imperial worlds. Species that had never collaborated were suddenly finding common ground in their economic grievances. "The Empire is dispatching diplomatic missions to major trading partners," Atlas noted. "They're offering increased tariff concessions and preferential trade status." "Too late," Chen murmured, watching the complex dance of interstellar politics play out across her displays. "They don't understand. This isn't about better trade terms. This is about trust." She pulled up the next set of data packets, each one carefully crafted to reach the right eyes at the right moment. And trust, once broken, requires more than credits to repair. The stars continued their eternal dance outside her viewport, silent witnesses to the beginning of the Empire's greatest challenge, the moment when its victims began to whisper to each other. The Meridian's secure computing core hummed with energy as holographic projections filled the chamber. Ambassador Chen stood at the center of a three-dimensional web of economic data, trade routes glowing like neural pathways between the stars. Captain Rodriguez watched from the doorway, mesmerized by the complexity of the display. "I've never seen the economic modeling system operating at full capacity," Rodriguez commented, stepping carefully through streams of data. "The power draw must be enormous." Chen nodded, her fingers dancing through the holographic interface as she adjusted variables. Atlas had to redistribute power from non-essential systems. The calculations we're running would overwhelm most planetary computing networks. The display shifted, showing cascade effects rippling through Imperial supply chains. Each point of light represented a potential pressure point, a trade route that could be redirected, a resource that could be temporarily withheld, a market that could be subtly influenced. "Atlas, implement sequence theta," Chen commanded. "Begin with the Dorsani crystal markets and expand outward through connected systems." The AI's response was immediate. "Sequence initiated. Warning. Imperial economic analysts will detect the pattern within 72 hours if they combine data from multiple sectors." "They won't," Chen replied, watching as new data flows appeared in the projection. Imperial bureaucracy keeps their analysts segregated by sector. It's one of their greatest weaknesses, the inability to see the whole picture. A priority alert flashed through her neural implant. The VEX Consortium had just announced a temporary suspension of currency exchange services, citing market irregularities. "Right on schedule." "Ambassador," Rodriguez said, studying a secondary display, "Imperial Command is requesting an emergency session of the Galactic Economic Council. They're claiming market manipulation by unknown parties." Chen allowed herself a small smile. How interesting that they recognize the manipulation but not the pattern. "Please inform them that Earth's representative will attend via quantum link. I'm afraid current schedules won't permit personal attendance." The captain raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to face them directly. Physical presence would give them too much data. Micro-expressions, physiological responses, subtle tells." Chen manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up a new series of projections. "Besides, I need to be here for the next phase." The economic web pulsed with new information as markets across the galaxy responded to the VEX announcement. Imperial currency values fluctuated wildly as traders rushed to protect their investments. Chen's fingers moved swiftly, making minute adjustments to her model. "Atlas, analyze reaction patterns in the outer rim territories," she instructed. The AI compiled the data, presenting it as a series of overlapping probability curves. "Colonial worlds are showing increased economic stress," Atlas reported. 87% probability of payment defaults on Imperial development loans within the next financial quarter. Rodriguez whistled softly. "They'll have to channel emergency funds from their core worlds to prevent colonial bankruptcies." "Precisely." Chen highlighted a cluster of systems near the galaxy's edge. "And when they do, these systems will experience a critical shortage of liquid capital. Their local governors will have to choose between maintaining Imperial fleet operations and paying their civil service." The chamber's lighting shifted as Atlas diverted more power to the computing core. The holographic display expanded, showing thousands of interconnected economic relationships spanning the galaxy. Each one represented a careful calculation, a precisely calibrated pressure point in Chen's strategy. "You're not just attacking their economy," Rodriguez realized, watching the cascade of effects ripple through the model. "You're making them choose between their military power and their administrative control." Chen nodded, her expression focused as she monitored the real-time market data flowing through her neural implant. The Empire built its power on two pillars: military might and bureaucratic control. Force them to choose between them, and both begin to crumble. The holographic web pulsed with new data as markets across 50 sectors responded to her carefully orchestrated moves. The Empire's mighty warships would soon find themselves confined to port, their fuel supplies redirected to maintain essential services on colonial worlds. It was a chess game played across the stars, with credits and resources instead of pieces, and Chen had just positioned herself for checkmate. The Meridian's diplomatic lounge had been transformed. Subtle lighting cast a warm glow across the room's curved walls, while atmospheric processors created distinct environmental bubbles for each species present. Ambassador Chen moved between these zones with practiced ease, her environmental suit adjusting automatically to each new atmosphere. The Dorsani mining guilds lost 30 years of projected profits. High Minister Karak stated, his crystalline form refracting light across the gathering. Our people demand justice. Beside him, Ambassador Exhal of the Arcturian Federation rippled colors of agreement. The Arcturian shipping lanes have suffered similar losses. The Empire's trade policies have cost us billions in revenue. Chen touched a control on her suit's wrist display, activating a holographic projection in the center of the room. What if I could show you a way to reclaim those losses and ensure they never happen again? The projection displayed a complex network of trade routes, resource flows, and market connections, all operating independently of Imperial control. As she explained each element, Chen watched understanding dawn in the expressions of the gathered representatives. This is more than a trade agreement, observed Mentor Rel of the Vex Consortium, their neural tendrils pulsing with interest. You're proposing an entirely new economic framework. One built on transparency and mutual benefit. Chen confirmed, expanding the projection to show projected growth curves. Every participant would have full access to transaction records, preventing the kind of manipulation the Empire practiced. The room filled with overlapping conversations as representatives discussed the implications. Shen's neural implant worked silently, allowing Atlas to analyze every reaction and adjustment probability calculations accordingly. A compelling proposal, came a new voice. Ambassador Thrix of the Meridian Alliance stepped forward, their hover platform gliding smoothly through the environmental barriers. But the Empire's response would be severe. They would see this as a direct challenge to their authority. Chen had been waiting for this objection. Atlas, Display Strategic Analysis 7. The hologram shifted, showing the current state of Imperial fleet deployments. Red indicators highlighted ships confined to port due to fuel shortages, while yellow markers showed vessels operating at reduced capacity. The Empire's military might is already compromised, Chen explained. Their choice to prioritize civil stability over fleet operations has left them vulnerable. By the time they realize the full scope of what we're building here, it will be too late for military intervention. The gathered diplomats studied the display with new interest. Species that had been historical rivals found themselves sharing tactical assessments, pointing out opportunities they each had observed. There would need to be guarantees, Karak stated, his crystalline surface showing decision patterns, safeguards to prevent any single member from gaining too much influence. Agreed. Akshal added, scales shifting to analytical patterns. We cannot simply replace one empire with another. Chen smiled, touching another control. The hologram transformed again, showing a detailed organizational structure with distributed authority and multiple layers of oversight. This isn't about creating a new power to replace the old, she explained. It's about building something fundamentally different, a cooperative where every member's prosperity depends on the prosperity of all. As the discussion continued, Chen received a private alert through her neural implant. Atlas had detected increased Imperial intelligence activity near the Meridian sector. They were searching for the source of their economic troubles, but their rigid protocols prevented them from considering a diplomatic vessel as a threat. Time grows short, Chen announced to the gathering. The Empire's intelligence services are expanding their search patterns. We need to decide. Do we continue accepting their dominance, or do we work together to build something better? The representatives exchanged glances across species barriers. Centuries of distrust and competition hung in the air between them. Then Mentor Rel spoke, their neural tendrils expressing certainty. The Vex Consortium commits to this endeavor. One by one, the other representatives added their support. Chen watched as ancient rivals reached preliminary agreements, already beginning to see the possibilities of cooperation. The Empire had taught them all to compete. Chen was teaching them to collaborate. And that lesson would reshape the galaxy. The Imperial capital's Grand Hall sparkled with artificial starlight, its vaulted ceiling projecting a real-time map of their controlled space. Ambassador Chen stood at the edge of the gathering, watching Imperial nobles and diplomatic representatives mingle beneath the false stars. Her neural implant hummed with encrypted transmissions from 43 worlds, all awaiting her signal. Ambassador Chen, Imperial High Diplomat Voss approached, his ceremonial robes even more elaborate than usual for the centennial celebration. We are honored by Earth's participation in this historic moment. Chen offered a perfect diplomatic smile. The honor is ours, High Diplomat. 100 years of Imperial guidance has certainly shaped the galaxy in remarkable ways. Voss's inner eyelids flickered with satisfaction. Indeed, though I must say, these recent economic disruptions have caused some concern. Perhaps we could discuss Earth's insights on the matter. Actually, Chen replied, checking the chronometer in her neural feed. I was hoping to address that very topic in my presentation. The Imperial Master of Ceremonies approached, scales shimmering with official importance. Ambassador Chen, we're ready for your cultural exchange presentation. Chen took her position on the central platform, which rose smoothly into the air to give her an unobstructed view of the gathered dignitaries. The artificial stars above dimmed slightly, focusing attention on her position. Distinguished representatives, noble lords, and honored guests, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic enhancement field. We are here to celebrate a century of imperial influence across the galaxy. The holographic display around her shifted, showing images of joint scientific missions, cultural exchanges, and architectural achievements. Several imperial nobles nodded appreciatively at the flattering display. These shared accomplishments demonstrate what we can achieve together, Chen continued, manipulating the controls on her wrist display. However, true cooperation requires honesty. Atlas, implement final protocol. The holographic display transformed. Gone were the carefully curated images of imperial benevolence. In their place, detailed financial records scrolled past. Evidence of systematic resource theft, market manipulation, and economic oppression. What is the meaning of this? Voss demanded, his diplomatic composure cracking. This is truth, High Diplomat, Chen replied calmly. Every transaction, every manipulated market, every stolen credit over the past 50 years. She gestured, and the display shifted again. But more importantly, this is the future. A new image formed above the gathering. A network of worlds and trade routes operating independently of imperial control. As the assembled dignitaries watched, points of light representing resources and wealth began flowing along new paths. I present to you the Stellar Cooperation Initiative, Chen announced. 43 worlds working together for mutual prosperity, free from imperial economic dominance. The Imperial Guard moved to surround the platform, but Chen's next words froze them in place. Any aggressive action would be unwise, she stated clearly. The initiative is already active. Imperial currency values are adjusting to the new reality as I speak. Emergency alerts began flooding the neural feeds of imperial officials. The artificial stars above flickered as real-time economic data caused automatic updates to the territory display. This is sedition, one imperial noble shouted. This is evolution, Chen corrected. The galaxy has outgrown the need for imperial control. We're offering a choice. Adapt to a new era of cooperation, or watch your influence fade into history. She touched a final control, and the displays showed the growing web of connections between former Imperial trading partners. Each line represented agreements negotiated in secret over the past months, activated now in perfect synchronization. The Empire taught us division. Chen concluded, looking directly at Voss. We chose unity instead. The future belongs to those who can work together as equals. As Imperial officials rushed to respond to the cascading economic alerts, Chen allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The Empire had sought to demonstrate its power by destroying Stellar Station Alpha. Instead, they had sown the seeds of their own transformation. The Meridian's bridge hummed with activity as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Ambassador Chen stood at the central command station, watching as the holographic display tracked the cascade of changes spreading through Imperial space. Captain Rodriguez monitored the military channels, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. 7th Fleet just announced they're suspending operations, Rodriguez reported. Fuel reserves dropped below critical levels. 3rd and 4th Fleets are reporting similar situations. Chen nodded, her neural implant processing streams of economic data. Atlas, display status of initiative implementation. A holographic map transformed, showing the progress of their carefully orchestrated plan. Green lines traced new trade routes as former Imperial worlds redirected their resources through initiative networks. Red markers indicated Imperial control points failing as their support structure evaporated. Ambassador. Atlas announced, Imperial High Command has issued emergency orders to all sector governors. They're attempting to force worlds to maintain existing trade agreements. How many governors are complying? Chen asked, though she already suspected the answer. 17%, the AI reported. The remainder are either openly supporting the initiative or claiming technical difficulties in implementing Imperial directives. A priority alert flashed through Chen's neural feed. The Dorseni Crystal Consortium had just announced exclusive trading rights with initiative members. Moments later, the Vex Financial Exchange declared they would only process transactions through initiative-approved channels. They're moving faster than projected, Rodriguez observed, studying the rapid changes in trade patterns. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The Empire's control was already fragile. Their subjects weren't loyal. They were trapped. We simply showed them the door. The bridge crew's attention was drawn to a new alert. Imperial High Diplomat Voss was requesting direct communication. Chen nodded to the communications officer, and Voss's image appeared on the main screen. This is madness, Ambassador, Voss stated, his usually perfect diplomatic composure showing signs of strain. You're destroying centuries of stability. No, High Diplomat, Chen replied calmly. We're building something better. Your own colonial governors recognize this. They've seen the projections. Initiative worlds will achieve higher economic growth in 2 years than they saw in 2 decades under Imperial control. The Imperial fleet will restore order, Voss threatened, but his inner eyelids flickered with uncertainty. With what fuel? Chen asked quietly. Your ships are stranded in port. The resources you need are now flowing through initiative channels. You can either adapt to the new reality or watch your empire crumble world by world. After Voss's image faded, Rodriguez turned to Chen. He'll try something desperate. The Empire won't just accept this. They don't have to accept it, Chen responded, manipulating the holographic controls to show another layer of data. It's already done. Atlas, display colonial system status. The map updated, showing dozens of Imperial colonies declaring independence or applying for initiative membership. Each declaration triggered automatic updates to trade routes and resource allocations, further weakening Imperial control. Look at the pattern, Chen instructed, highlighting specific regions. The outer colonies move first, knowing the Imperial fleet can't reach them. Their success encourages middle sector worlds to follow. The Empire's territory contracts like a dying star, growing denser but smaller. A new series of alerts demanded attention. The Imperial Senate was calling an emergency session. Several prominent noble houses had already pledged support to the initiative, seeing which way the solar winds were blowing. "They're beginning to understand," Chen mused, watching the political realignment unfold. "Power doesn't come from forcing others to follow. It comes from inspiring them to join." As the next wave of economic data flowed through her neural implant, Chen thought back to the destruction of Stellar Station Alpha. The Empire had sought to demonstrate their strength through destruction. Instead, they had revealed their weakness, and in doing so, had helped birth a new era of galactic cooperation. The former Imperial Palace had changed. Where once stern-faced guards stood watch over marble halls, now representatives from hundreds of worlds moved freely through the renamed Galactic Cooperation Center. Ambassador Chen walked these transformed corridors, her steps echoing against floors inlaid with symbols of member worlds. The Dorsani mining guilds report another record quarter, Atlas informed her through her neural implant. Their new profit-sharing agreements with local systems have increased production efficiency by 40%. Chen paused at a vast window overlooking the capital city, watching transport ships from dozens of species moving through designated flight lanes. 5 years had passed since the initiative's revelation, and the galaxy had transformed more rapidly than even she had predicted. "Ambassador Chen," a familiar voice called. She turned to see High Minister Carax approaching, his crystalline form now bearing the distinctive patterns of the initiative's Council of Representatives. "The new trade delegation from the core systems has arrived." Chen nodded, falling into step beside him as they headed toward the main conference chamber. Former Imperial worlds. Indeed, Carax's crystal surface rippled with amusement. They finally realized that cooperation produces better returns than isolation. Their application for membership includes detailed proposals for integrating their remaining technological advantages into our shared network. The conference chamber doors slid open, revealing a space that symbolized everything the initiative stood for. The room was divided into environmental sectors, allowing representatives of different species to participate comfortably without protective gear. The central holographic display showed real-time updates of trade routes, resource exchanges, and collaborative projects across initiative space. Ambassador, a familiar figure approached, former Imperial High Diplomat Voss, now serving as representative of the reformed Kelleran systems. "The economic projections you presented 5 years ago, we exceeded them by 23%. Because we work together now," Chen replied, watching as other representatives took their places. The Empire saw the galaxy as a resource to be controlled. The initiative sees it as a community to be nurtured. The session began with reports from various sectors. The VEX Consortium presented data on their new financial transparency protocols. Arcturian shipping guilds detailed the success of their collaborative defense arrangements. Former Imperial colonies shared stories of cultural renaissance as traditional arts flourished under initiative support. Chen's neural implant hummed with a private message from Captain Rodriguez, now Admiral of the initiative's peacekeeping fleet. "You should see this," the message read, followed by images of the latest graduating class from the Diplomatic Academy. Young representatives from 40 species, trained in the principles of cooperative diplomacy that Chen had championed. "Atlas," Chen subvocalized, "display historical comparison." A small hologram appeared before her, showing the galaxy as it had been under Imperial rule. Fragmented, inefficient, characterized by artificial barriers and controlled scarcity. Beside it, current data showed an intricate web of cooperation, with resources and ideas flowing freely between worlds. "A remarkable transformation," observed Ambassador Exhall, his scales shifting through patterns of satisfaction as he joined her in studying the display, though some said it was impossible. "They thought power came from control," Chen replied, watching as another trade route activated on the map, connecting former rivals in a new joint venture. "They never understood that the greatest power comes from working together." The chamber filled with the sounds of productive discussion as representatives debated new proposals and shared solutions to common challenges. Chen thought back to that moment on Stellar Station Alpha, watching Imperial warships approach. The Empire had sought to teach her the price of defiance. Instead, they had taught the galaxy the value of unity. As she took her place at the conference table, Chen reflected that this was her true victory, not the defeat of an empire, but the birth of something better. A galaxy where strength came from cooperation, where diversity bred innovation, and where the future was built on bridges rather than barriers. The stars outside continued their eternal dance, bearing witness to a new age of galactic civilization.